Hey everyone, I'm here again today to continue my Austen in August videos, and I'm going to be talking about Pride and Prejudice, both the book and four of the adaptations of it. So first, to talk about the book, this was Jane Austen's second published novel, and it was originally written with the title First Impressions. Both of them would fit the book quite well, I think. This is definitely, I would have to say, the most beloved Jane Austen book, the most popular, most famous, most well-known, whatever. 9 times out of 10, if anyone loves a Jane Austen book, it's Pride and Prejudice. So, my opinions are kind of going against the grain for this book. I feel like what I think is kind of an unpopular opinion, but whatever. I do love this book, but it's probably like third or so on my list of Jane Austen favorites under Persuasion and Emma. Jane Austen herself described it as perhaps too light, bright, and sparkling. There's definitely a contrast to her first book, Sense and Sensibility, and I would say all of those things do apply to it, and in a good way. It's a delightful comedy of manners, is what I would call it. It's delightful, and I really do love it. But my opinions on the character kind of different from what everybody else feels. I'm not going to say everyone, almost everybody universally loves Elizabeth Bennet and Mr. Darcy in this book. They are probably, the most favorite Jane Austen hero and heroine. But they're actually kind of in the middle if I had to rank my favorite characters. They wouldn't be near the bottom, but they're not really near the top either. Everybody loves Elizabeth because she's just so witty and, strong-minded and independent and all of that kind of thing. And Mr. Darcy's romantic and rich and all of that. But I do like them as characters, but for all the different reasons. I'm not crazy about either of them in the beginning of the book. What I love about Elizabeth and Darcy is their character development. They grow and change as characters and learn from their mistakes, both of them. People like to play with what word in the title applies to which character. Darcy, he's proud, and is Elizabeth the prejudiced one, or which way is it? I like to think that the words apply to both of them because they were both quite proud and prejudiced at the beginning of the story, and they both, realize where their thinking has been wrong and work to change that, and they work to develop as people to essentially to become a couple and to both be deserving and worthy of each other, not just, like Darcy having to change to be worthy of Elizabeth, which is what I feel like a lot of people think of this book. And that is what I really appreciate about it the most. Yes, so I do definitely love this book. I don't want to make it sound like I hate it or anything. I would give it a 5 out of 5, definitely. It is a wonderful book, and I do recommend that everybody reads it. Okay, so next I'm going to talk about a couple of the adaptations, and again, I think I'm going to split this into 2 videos. The first one is, it was a Hollywood theatrical movie release. It's from 1940, and it stars Brie Larson as Elizabeth Bennet and Laurence Olivier as Fitzwilliam Darcy. This is definitely not a version to be taken seriously. It is a screwball comedy. The book, yes, it has a lot of comedic moments. It's really funny, but not like this. It's made everything to be, just more over the top and funny. Everything is funny. For example, there's a scene in the beginning where Lady Lucas and Mrs. Bennet are having a carriage race, which is just added for comedic purposes, for no other reason. It was funny. That is definitely true. I actually first saw only the ending part of this movie very, very soon after reading the book. I happened to catch it on TV, and it was just like a WTF moment for me. A certain character had a scene that was a total 180 from the book character. I don't want to spoil it, and I'm like, what? This is Pride and Prejudice? What is going on? So I actually got to see the movie in full a few years ago when I bought it on DVD. And I do like it as a movie, but you have to appreciate it for what it is. It's a screwball comedy with some resemblance to Pride and Prejudice. It's not a faithful adaptation, so don't expect it to be that, because it's not. It does follow the basic plotline of the book pretty closely, but it changes and cuts a lot of things. Like I said, screwball comedy. They also changed the time period. They set it ahead about 20 years or so after the book. It's not Regency, so they've got huge exaggerated costumes of like the 1830s setting with the big hoop skirts and puff sleeves and bonnets. Just total opposite of the Regency look. In terms of the performances in this, I actually really love Greer Garson as Elizabeth. I feel like performance-wise, she captured the Elizabeth of the book perfectly. She had the perfect combination of sweetness and archness that is Elizabeth Bennet. Unfortunately, she was way too old. She was 36 years old, so she was about 16 years too old to play Elizabeth. And if it wasn't for that little minor point there, she would actually be my favorite Elizabeth Bennet. Also kind of a controversial opinion, I guess. As for Laurence Olivier as Darcy, he is not the Darcy of the book. He's way too, like, flirty and really, like, batting his eyelashes to Elizabeth and outwardly charming. And it's like, it's so obvious that he's in love with her, and she's really got to, I don't know how she doesn't see it. I guess because the script says that she doesn't. The only other noteworthy performance in this is Edna May Oliver, who plays Lady Catherine de Bourgh. And at first, she is a wonderful Lady Catherine, but she has a weird, as I said, a WTF scene at the end that I will not spoil. You have to see it for yourself and just scratch your head and be like, what were they thinking here? But yeah, this movie is that it's a funny movie. It's not a faithful Pride and Prejudice, but I do think that fans especially should watch it and enjoy it for what it is. And I give it a 3.5 out of 5. So the next adaptation of P&P that I'm going to be talking about is the 1980 BBC miniseries. This is probably the most unknown / underrated version, and that's largely to do with the time period. As I mentioned in my SNS video, the older TV versions or adaptations of books were not up to the production values that we're used to today. They were very stagey and theatrical, low budget, you know, costumes and settings. They're just not up to today's standards. So you really just have to get used to that in order to enjoy these versions. And thankfully, I'm able to look past all that and enjoy them for what they are. A lot of people seem to think that this is boring and just too close to the book. I don't think so. Yes, the production values are not great, but I think where this adaptation truly shines is in its casting. It has some of the best, if not the best, portrayals of several of the characters. You have Elizabeth Garvey, this girl right here, as Elizabeth. David Rintoul, who plays Mr. Darcy. A lot of people think that he is perhaps like too robotic and stiff. I actually think he's the closest to the book Darcy. Make of that what you will. Has the best Mr. Collins, Mrs. Bennet, Mr. Bennet, Lydia Bennet, Charlotte Lucas, and Mr. and Mrs. Gardner. There were only a couple of performances in here that I was not crazy about. For example, the actress who plays Kitty Bennet looks like 10 years older than the rest of her sisters. It was way out of place, especially since I thought the rest of them were all really good in their parts. So yeah, this is not a perfect version. It is very faithful, but it's perhaps a little too low-key, understated. It's not quite, doesn't have really anything over the top like some of the other versions, or anything sexy whatsoever, but I really love it, and I give it a 4 out of 5. So that concludes part 1 of my Pride and Prejudice review video. Stay tuned in a second for part 2, where I will talk about the next 2 adaptations.